For 8 years, my blood sugar was getting worse every single year, and my GP never mentioned it once. I wasn't diabetic, I was always within range. And that's the thing, within range doesn't mean what most people think it means. My HbA1c was 38 in 2015. By 2023, it was 47. 1 point from a diabetes diagnosis. And at every blood test appointment in between, I was told the results were fine. I'm Neil. I've got 13 years of NHS blood tests. What I found in the data and what happened in the 14 months after I started taking it seriously changed more than just one number. If your GP has ever told you your blood sugar is fine and something still feels off, this video is probably the one you've been looking for, because fine and optimal are two completely different things, and the gap between them is where most of the damage happens. First, what 13 years of blood test data actually shows, how blood sugar drifts towards a diagnosis years before anyone flags it. Second, the moment the trajectory reversed, 14 months, I'll show you the exact numbers. And third, why this mechanism connects to almost everything else that was going wrong, because it wasn't just about blood sugar. We start in December 2023. I was 18 stone, 1 point from diabetes. Here's what the data showed. Tim Spector has spent years studying why the same food does completely different things in different bodies. He's a professor of genetic epidemiology at King's College London, co-founder of Zoe, and one of the most cited scientists in the world when it comes to metabolic health. His PREDICT study, over 2,000 volunteers, 130,000 meals, continuous glucose monitors, produced a finding that I think should be on the wall of every GP surgery in the country. Less than 1% of people respond to food in an average way across sugar, insulin and fat combined. Less than 1%. The other 99% of us are metabolically individual in ways that standard blood test ranges simply can't capture. Which means the question, is my HbA1c normal, is almost the wrong question. The right question is, what direction is it heading and how fast? How blood sugar drifts. Here's how this works, and I want to be clear, this isn't a condition that suddenly appears. It develops quietly over years. The mechanism doesn't wait for a diagnosis to get started. Every time you eat, particularly refined carbohydrates, processed foods, anything that hits the bloodstream quickly, your pancreas releases insulin. Insulin's job is to knock on your cell's door and say, let this glucose in, cells comply, glucose moves out of the blood and into tissue, job done. That works brilliantly when it happens occasionally, but when it happens constantly, multiple meals, frequent snacking, highly processed food that digests in minutes, insulin has to knock on those doors 40, 50, 60 times a day. So imagine knocking on your neighbour's door 40 times a day. First week, they may answer. By month 2, they've stopped. They've tuned you out. That's insulin resistance. Your cells have heard, let glucose in, so many times, they've stopped listening properly. So your pancreas knocks harder, pumps out more insulin, trying to get the same response. And for a while, it works. Blood glucose stays roughly normal, which is why your GP looks at the numbers and says, fine. But the system is straining quietly, year on year. Fasting stops the knocking, gives cells silence, 16 hours, 24 hours, longer. And in week 3, they start answering the door again. It's not a metaphor, that's the mechanism behind insulin sensitivity restoration. This matters whether you have a diagnosis or not. The mechanism I just described, the door getting ignored more and more, operates in people for 10 to 15 years before anyone puts a name on it. HbA1c rising from 38 to 46 over 8 years is that mechanism running in the background, showing up quietly in numbers that were always described as fine. The reason this matters beyond any single condition is that insulin responding this way to poor food timing, to constant eating, to the wrong types of food, it is a mechanism, not a diagnosis. It operates in people years before anyone flags it. Understanding it at 38 or 42 gives you more options than understanding it at 52. Sarah Berry is Zoe's chief scientist at King's College London. Her team ran the Big If study, hundreds of thousands of participants looking at what a simple 14-hour fasting window actually does. Just 14 hours. Most people are asleep for 9 of them. Within 2 weeks, people reported weight reduction, better mood, less hunger and more energy. 2 weeks, not 6 months, not after a dramatic intervention, a 14-hour eating window, consistently applied, and the body starts responding differently within a fortnight. That matters because it tells you the reversal mechanism isn't dramatic, the door doesn't need battering down, it just needs a fewer knocks. Think of metabolic flexibility like a gearbox. A car with a functioning gearbox uses different gears for different situations. First gear pulling away, fifth gear on the motorway, uses fuel efficiently, adapts to the road. Most people eating constantly are stuck in third gear. Engine running, fuel burning, but inefficiently, loud, redlining. The car works, but it's working harder than it needs to all the time. Metabolic flexibility means teaching your body to shift gears properly. Fasted state, body burning fat, running clean, quiet engine. Fed state, glucose available, used efficiently, insulin responsive. The gearbox works both ways. The first month of changing how and when you eat feels clunky. You're learning where the gears are. By month 3, you shift without thinking. That's what happened to me. That's what the data shows. 2 things that people get wrong about blood sugar and that I got wrong myself. First, that HbA1c within range means you're fine. It doesn't. It means you haven't crossed a threshold. There's a significant difference between 38 and 46, both within range at different points in my history, and the direction of travel between them matters enormously. Within range is not a destination, it's a position on a spectrum. Second misconception, eating little and often keeps your metabolism running. I believed this for years. 6 small meals keep the engine ticking over, except your kitchen oven doesn't work that way. Leaving it on 24 hours a day doesn't make it more efficient, it just runs up the gas bill. Every meal is an insulin spike. Every insulin spike locks fat in place for 3 to 5 hours minimum. 6 meals a day means insulin is elevated almost constantly. The oven never switches off, and when the oven never switches off, the body never switches to fat burning. I didn't understand that. Nobody told me. And I suspect nobody told you either. I wanted to know if the trajectory could actually reverse. Not theoretically, in my body with my NHS blood tests as the measure. Because the data going in one direction for 8 years is one thing. Watching it go the other way, documented, confirmed by my GP, is something else entirely. Let me give you actual numbers, not rounded, not approximate. September 2015, HbA1c 38, normal. October 2016, 40, borderline, but fine apparently. July 20, 43.2, pre-diabetic. I was told it was something to keep an eye on. October 22, 47, 1 point from a diabetes diagnosis, still described as pre-diabetic, not urgent. December 23, 47, still pre-diabetic, 18 stone, on statins, gout medications, asthma inhalers, antihistamines, 8 years, 8 data points, all described as fine and within range, something to monitor. The trajectory was pointing somewhere specific. Nobody said so. And here's the thing that bothers me about that. It's not a criticism of any individual GP. It's a systems problem. A single reading in a normal range gets a tick. A reading that's drifted X points over 8 years, that's a story. The system isn't set up to tell you. I had to tell it myself. December 23, Boxing Day. Actually looked in the mirror and decided this was it. This has to end now. I started with a 10-day water fast. I won't pretend it was pleasant. It was hard, really hard. Days 3 and 4 were rough in ways I wasn't prepared for. But something shifted around day 6. The hunger quieted a bit. The mental clarity arrived. And when I came out of it and moved to whole food eating, time-restricted window, roughly 8 hours, I felt different in a way I hadn't felt in years. 6 weeks later, I did a 17-day water fast. Again, not an experience I'd describe as enjoyable, but what those 2 extended fasts did, the way they reset something in how my body was running, I genuinely believe they were the foundation everything else was built on. Then months of time-restricted eating, whole food, non-UPFs as much as possible. Not perfect. I am anything but perfect in this. Something I didn't expect after coming out the other side of those fasts and cleaning the system out, my taste completely changed. I still mentally reach for sweet things. Old habit, but when I eat them, they don't deliver what I thought they would. My masalas, my soups, my whole food dishes, the things I never would have chosen willingly before. I enjoy these so much more now. The body is recalibrated. It genuinely does. And what I noticed in my data is that the mechanism running through my HbA1c numbers, the slow drift, then the reversal, isn't specific to my circumstances. It's a metabolic process. The numbers tell the same story in a lot of people. They just don't always have a name for it yet. January 2025, first blood test after the real work began. HbA1c 40, back in normal range. 14 months after December 2023. April 2025, 37, optimal. November 2025, 37, held. And it wasn't just HbA1c. My liver enzymes, ALT, had been elevated in December 2023, sitting at 69. By November 2025, 10. My triglycerides, which had been chronically high throughout the drift years, came down. Kidney functions, excellent. I was off all my medications since February 24, no statins, no gout medications, no asthma inhalers, no antihistamines. I'm not telling you that this will happen for you. I'm telling you it happened for me. And it was tracked against 13 years of NHS blood tests and reviewed by my GP. The data is the data. Now, some honesty. First month adaptation, it's not comfortable. The hunger, the mood, the adjustment, normal. Month 2 and 3, something starts to shift. Energy is a bit more stable. Hunger signals, they are changing. And month 6, first meaningful blood test comparison, the numbers were moving. Month 14, HbA1c from pre-diabetic to optimal. That's the timeline, not 3 weeks, 14 months. If you're at the stage where you're asking questions before things get serious, this is what the channel is for. Real data, real GP conversation, properly documented. Subscribe if you want to follow it properly. Right, what to actually do, and I'm going to be specific because vague advice is what's got us here. If your HbA1c is sitting anywhere between 40 and 47, whether your GP flagged it or not, here's what I'd suggest based on my own experiences. Start with fasting, not forever, not dramatically, but do it. If you're a woman, I'd say no longer than 72 hours for any single extended fast. The research that I've read suggests longer than that starts to affect hormones in ways that aren't helpful, particularly for women. But a 72-hour fast, 3 days water only, electrolytes, sensible preparation, done once or once a month for a few months while eating whole foods, the rest of the time, is something I believe is genuinely worth doing. The 16 to 18-hour daily window alongside that is your everyday tool. If you're a man, a 7 to 10 day water fast is, in my experience and from the research that I've read, unlikely to harm you if you're otherwise healthy and not on relevant medication and have no history of eating disorders. That's a big if. But if those boxes are ticked, it's worth considering seriously. It's what moved the needle for me. Whichever way you start, after the fast, whole food, non-UPF as much as you can manage. And here's what I want to say about that. It doesn't mean no dessert, no bread, no things you enjoy. It means those things become the 10 or 15%, not the baseline. You can have ice cream, you can have cake. There are ways to manage the blood sugar impact. Adding cream or fat to slow the glucose absorption, for instance, it works. But the foundation is real food, soups, stews, salads, things that look like what they are. Get your HbA1c tested. If you haven't recently, ask your GP or use a private blood test service. They're not expensive. That's your baseline. Retest it in 3 months. You're looking for direction, not perfection. If you want more granular data, a continuous glucose monitor, even for 2 weeks, will show you exactly how your body responds to different foods. Tim Spector's Predict data showed up to 10-fold individual variation. Your response to oats or rice or bread may be completely different to mine. The monitor will tell you the truth. If you're on diabetes medication, metformin, insulin, anything that directly manages blood glucose, speak to your GP before fasting. This is not optional. Fasting changes medication requirements and the interaction can be dangerous if it's not supervised. The same applies if you're on blood pressure medication. History of eating disorders, extending fasting is not appropriate for you. Different intervention will be needed. Red flags during any fast: dizziness that doesn't resolve with electrolytes, chest pain, confusion, severe headaches. Break the fast, contact your GP, or in the UK NHS 111. I've built a fasting and blood test tracker that logs your HbA1c over time alongside your fasting window, so you can see the direction of travel, the way I started tracking my own data. The link's in the description and it's free. One more thing before you go, and I mean this seriously. Everything I've shared today is educational. It's based on my own experience, my own NHS blood tests, my own GP conversations. It's not medical advice. It is not a diagnosis. It is not a prescription. please speak to your GP before changing your fasting pattern, your diet, or any medication, especially if you're on diabetes or blood pressure meds.